Hello, this is Ireti Fality from Isco, Nigeria, and today we'll be looking at quadratic equation using completing the square method. Now, before we proceed into this, we are going to answer this question. What are perfect squares? Perfect squares are numbers that have a whole number as their square root. An example of which is 4. Now, the square root of 4 is what? 2. Now 2, which is the square root of 4, is not a perfect square because the square root of 2 is 1.414, which is not a whole number. So what are perfect squares? We have 9, we have 4, we have 25, and we can continue to name them like that. But the question now is, how do you make a number a perfect square? Let's take a look at number 3. How do you make 3 a perfect square? By simply adding 1 to it. And it will become 4, which is a perfect square. Let's take a look at 7. When you add 2 to it, you make it a perfect square, which is 9. Now, I know that by the time I ask you to make 46, 54, all this is a perfect square, you know what to add. Now, let's take a look at this. A square plus 8a. Now, whether this is a square or not, it's not that obvious, but I can tell you it is not a square because we are going to make it a perfect square now. Now, what do we do to it to make it a perfect square? Now, one thing that we need to focus on is this number 8. It is the coefficient of the variable that does not have the square. So let's say we have 8. What you are going to do is you are going to divide this 8 by 2 and square it. That's what you are going to add to make this a perfect square. This 8, you are going to divide it by 2 and you are going to square it. For future purpose, what we are doing in real sense is that you are multiplying the 8 by half, which is equal to 8 over 2, and then squaring the answer. Now, once we have this, let me clean this in case we want to use the space in the future. Good. Now, what we have now is that we have a square. And one thing that we need to know is that how to write the square root of this equation. So, we have this a, it contains the square, and this 8 over 2 also contains a square. So what as a square, this is a square, this is a square. So what we are going to do is that we are going to write the a, which has the square, and we are going to pick this. Please take note of that. We are not making use of this plus, we are making the front that is in front of 8a. So we are going to say plus 8 over 2, which is 4. Sorry. So I want to write it like that. So 8 over 2 is what? 4. Then you are going to do what? You are going to square it. Now what I'm saying is this, that this is equal to this. Now in maths, we don't just come to conclusions like that. We need to prove it whether it's correct or not. And so a plus 4 square is the same thing as a plus 4 times a plus 4. Now a square is what? A times a is what? A square. Oops, we are going places. A times 4 is what? Plus what? 4a. 4 times a is what? 4a. 4 times 4 is what? 16. Now, so we have a square plus what? Plus 8a. 4a plus 4 is what? 8a plus 16. Does it look like this? Okay, now let me quickly do this. So this is what? A square plus what? 8a, and a divided by 2 is what? 4. 4 times 4 raised to the power of 2 is what? 16. So we can say this is equal to this. Now don't forget, what you need to do, what you need to know here is to know how to make this a perfect square and how to write out the square root. Now let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at this. Now, how do we make this a perfect square? Also, Now this is also simple and straightforward. What you need to do is to add 6 over 2 everything squared. After you have done this, what you have done is that you have actually multiplied the 6 by half to give you what? 6 over 2. And this in real sense is what? D squared minus 6d plus 3 squared, which is 9. And so how do you get the square root of this? You pick this d, you pick this 3, and you pick the sign that is in front of this 6d, not this plus. So you are going to say d squared, sorry, you are going to say d. Let us ignore the square. So this is d squared. Yeah. So you are going to ignore the square. So d minus, then you are going to write the 3. So this is the square root of this equation. So 3 squared, which is 9. Now, so what you need to do is simple. Like I did before, I don't want to be proving it again. D minus 3 times d minus 3. Prove it and try to see if you are going to get d squared minus 6d plus 9, which you are going to get if you do it properly. Now, let's take a look at another question. Now, when we take a look at this, u squared minus 1 over 2u. Now, what we want to do is simple. We want to make this a perfect square. And the question is, what do we add to this to make it a perfect square? Like I said the other time, what we are doing is that we are multiplying this by half. So this is more like 1 over 2 times 1 over 2. Now, so this will give us what? 1 over 4. Then everything square. So what we are going to do is that you are going to add, let me use a brighter color. Yeah. So plus 1 over 4 square. And how do you make it? How do you find the square root? You say you pick the sign that is in front of the 1 over 2u minus 1 over 4 everything square. So we pick the u that has the square, 1 over 4 that has the square, so u 1 over 4 square. So this is the square root of this. Now let's take a look at another one. We have g squared minus 4 whole number 3 over 2. Now let me write this properly so that some people will not think that, okay, this is 43 over 2. No, this is g squared minus 4 whole number 3 over 2. So 2g, yeah. So if you want to make this a perfect square, first I tell my students that anytime you see a mixed fraction in a problem, to solve it, you need to change it to improper fraction, at least to make it easy for you. So what you do is we change this to improper fraction. We have g squared minus 2 times 4 is 8 plus 3 is what? 11 over 2g. Now, what do you do to this to make the perfect square? You add 11. So you multiply this by half. So you have g squared minus 11 over 2g plus 11 times 1 is what? 11. 2 times 2 is what? 4. Everything bracket square. So how do you get the square root? You just pick g, you pick this minus, and you pick this 11 over 4. Then you square everything. Now, this is very useful by the time we go fully into whatever I want to do in completing the square method. Now again, let's take a look at this. Now, so we say c squared plus 1 over 2c. So what we need to do is 1 number 1 over 2. If we take it to improper fraction, you have c squared plus 3 over 2. C. So you now have, what do you do to this to make it a perfect square? You had 3 over 4, everything bracket square. When you multiply this by half, you get 3 over 4. Then you say C plus, we are picking this plus, not this one. So 3 over 4, everything bracket square, is equal to C squared plus 3 over 2C plus 3 over 4, everything bracket square. So that is it. This is very important, and by the time we start doing it in completing the square method, you will see the efficacy, the importance of making looking at the perfect square of something and making it a perfect square. You will see the importance in the next tutorial. Thank you very much. I see you in the next tutorial. I remain Ireti Fanity. Thank you. Yeah, hello. This is Ireti from Isco, Nigeria, and today we'll be looking 1, 2, 3.